So today we're going to do a season preview for the New York Redbulls. And, for this upcoming season, there's no doubt that there is a sense of more urgency and a sense that they need to, of course, win something for this upcoming season for the Redbulls because, it has to be hard for Redbulls fans to realize last season it was the worst case scenario where they saw their intercity rival NYCFC lifting an MLS Cup only in their 5th year in existence, while, it is now 27 years into the MLS existed, and ever since they came into the league and become one of those original 10 teams, they still have yet to win an MLS Cup. But despite the fact that they are desperate in terms of trying to win something, when I look at this team, it doesn't tell me that they're going to do well for this upcoming season, especially the lack of signing and lack of depth of this team is a big question coming into this season. I'll talk more about it once we get to the concern part of the season preview for the Redbulls. Now, they finished last season with a 13-9-12 record, finished with 48 points. They only scored 39 goals, which was one of the lowest team in terms of scoring goals last season. But they also gave up the lowest amount of goals. Well, actually tied with the lowest amount of goals because they were equaling the mark that Nashville SC and also the New England Revolution set with 33 goals conceded last season, and they had a goal differential of +6. They finished 7th in the Eastern Conference to keep themselves alive to not only, of course, making the playoffs again, but also the fact that they keep the playoff streak still alive, which, again, it feels like every single season, I feel like that streak is going to come to an end for the Redbulls. They somehow still able to make it to the playoffs at the end of the season, though last year was probably the closest that they came from that streak coming to an end. And again, just look at this team. It feels like maybe this is finally the year, and watch how they're probably going to once again somehow get themselves just barely into the playoffs after the end of this season. Now, the last 5 seasons, they finished 7th place in 2021. They finished 6th in 2020. Finished 6th again in 2019. 2018 was no doubt the best year for the Redbulls, at least 5 years in, where they actually won the Supporters' Shield and finished first. And really, that was maybe one of their best shot in terms of winning MLS Cup. I mean, I know that was also the year that they kind of had to bat Atlanta in terms of potentially reaching to MLS Cup, but during that season, they actually had the head-to-head advantage against Atlanta, and some might even say that for Atlanta, they want that season, if they want to, of course, win MLS Cup, they're going to have to get through their nemesis, that is the New York Redbulls, and they did exactly that. But in terms of a Redbulls perspective, that was a chance, especially with the way that, they would have got Atlanta, which they did in the conference final. They could have had a big shot of going to MLS Cup, but unable to do so that time. And then in 2017, they also just barely made it to the playoffs as a 6th seed. Now, in terms of players that they signed, so as I mentioned, they didn't really sign a lot of players this offseason. I mean, the only signings that is notable is Lewis Morgan coming from Inter Miami that they signed in the early part of the offseason. They also bought one of the other Nealis brother back to the Redbulls, and Dylan Nealis from Nashville SC. And then they, of course, made a relatively under-the-radar move by ring Jesus Castellanos for York U20. I mean, I'm pretty sure they saw how NYCFC have a Castellanos that turns out to be amazing. They hope that we're gonna get our own Castellanos, and hope that he also will develop to be a decent player. Though this Castellanos, I think he's more of a midfielder, unlike the other Castellanos with NYCFC is basically a lethal number 9, and probably the most lethal number 9 in this league. But besides that, in the draft, they got Seth Kuhn, a guy called Giannis, which, that's nothing to do with the guy that currently plays for the Bucks, but more like the guy that they drafted in the Super Draft. They got Ovante Mullins from the Super Draft and Matthew Niceta from the Super Draft too. Now, in terms of players that they lost this offseason, well, they definitely lost some key names. One of them is Kyle Duncan, who they actually sold him off to Belgium. Now, I'm not quite sure what exactly the amount it is, but don't be surprised. It's probably not for a lot, or if anything, they probably sold Kyle Duncan on a free, because one of the biggest criticism for the Red Bulls is the fact that they tend to sell their biggest asset for such a cheap amount of money. I mean, this is a team that is doing a good job in terms of producing talent and then, of course, selling those pieces off to Europe. But one thing that they do not do well is just getting those assets and getting that money in return. So, yeah, again, I won't be surprised they didn't really get a lot for Kyle Duncan, even though he was playing one of the more talented player and one of the biggest asset that they can sell off to a team in Europe. They also lost Sean Davis, who's going to be going to Nashville SC. I mean, it's not a big surprise because, there's three things that the New York Red Bulls has to live. Death, taxes, and also them losing their captain seem like every 2 years, and yeah, he's going to be going to Nashville SC, while Matthias Jorgensen, who had a relatively underwhelming career during his time with the Red Bulls, he's going to be going back to Denmark and join Ishbert FB. Then you got Jake Lick going to the Tampa Bay Rowdies in the USL Championship, and then players that they let go. They actually let go of Daniel Royer, who I know Royer last season did not have a good year, and he is of course getting up to his age, but he is still a dangerous threat for this team, and he's been the dangerous threat for this team for a couple of years. So it's kind of surprising they decided to not let him back, even though again I know his production really dropped last season, and maybe that's why they started to think about cut ties with him. But other guys that they let go is Luca Lewis, Tom Edwards. I put a star next to his name because there is rumors that it looks like they are going to sign him permanently from Stoke City, but as of now, it seems like he is going to be going back to Stoke City after his loan spell ends. Fabio, another player that I'm kind of surprised they decided to not re-sign him, despite the fact that he had an incredible year with the Red Bulls, and I would have thought that they would exercise that option to buy option that they had as part of this loan deal, but he is going to be going back to Brazil. Andrew Gutmann, of course, going back to Atlanta United, and Yoda Diary, who was on loan with RB Salzburg, is now going back to the parent club of the New York Red Bulls. Now, in terms of optimism for this team, well, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this was actually relatively hard for me to come up with some optimism, and you know that sometimes when I do the season preview, especially for teams that is like lower in this in the standings that they finished last year, it's tough to basically give some optimism, and I kind of had to nitpick a little bit. But for the Red Bulls, even making the playoffs last season, it was hard for me to pick optimism because again, I just don't think this is a squad that should be very optimistic about that they actually are going to be much better than the one from last season. But at least one of the optimism is that they get Caden Clark back at least for one last season. I mean, it's he is definitely a very talented player, one of the most talented youngster in MLS, and I thought this offseason was it. He was gonna finally make that jump to Europe and join the other Red Bulls parent club in RB Leipzig, but now it seems like he's gonna be back with the Red Bulls at least for one more season in New York, and we'll see how he of course can do with that with this team. And I know it's still going to be very disheartening for him the fact that he's now back with the New York Red Bulls, but I'm pretty sure he has something to prove this coming season, that next season when he does go to RB Leipzig and want to get some minutes of this team, he can use this season as kind of a springboard of him having a breakout year so that he can definitely get a chance to be in the RB Leipzig team for next season. They're getting back a healthy Aaron Long this season. Now, obviously, I don't think they're going to get him back straight away because he's still recovering from I think it's either a torn ACL or a broken leg that he suffered last season. But that's definitely a big bonus considering the fact that they also lost Andres Reyes for a relatively long time in the midst of this off season, and that center back depth. Yeah, it's going to be really tested now. And that's kind of also pretty much the case for most of the field, because that's where we started to get to the concern. And I'm pretty sure Red Bulls fan had a lot of things to concern about this upcoming season. And one of them is the lack of signing. And because of the lack of signing, you could add the lack of depth in multiple part of the field. I mean, this team is a very thin squad in my opinion, and that if they do hit with an injury crisis, I don't know how they're going to recover. I mean, I guess one thing I will say with the lack of signing is that this is not something new to this team. I mean, this is a team that tends to not always spend big or make a lot of signings. They always try to look within the organization and look within their academy that is always considered one of the best academy in the league. But I've said before, I feel like this Red Bulls academy, those talent that they produced a couple years ago that turns out to be a big hit, and eventually they sell them off to Europe. That isn't kind of the same thing nowadays with the Red Bulls academy. I'm not saying the Red Bulls academy is bad or anything. It's still top tier, but it's not producing good talent as much as it used to, and that's kind of where you get to this team right now, where this is almost kind of like a new generation of players that when you look at this roster, there's a lot of Red Bulls players that come out of the academy, but a lot of them are kind of a little underwhelming and definitely not as good as the previous generation. So yeah, that's kind of maybe is the reason for lack of signing, because the front office still believe that their academy is going to produce some good talent where it's going to be enough where they can get away with not spending some money, but still be a playoff team. And it just feels like that's not gonna that isn't going to be the case anymore because of the lack of talent that is coming out of the Red Bull academies in these last couple of years. And then of course the lack of goal threat going forward. I mean, this team's only scored 39 goals last season. I mean, bringing Lewis Morgan, he'll definitely help a little bit on the attack, though I will say that Morgan last year, he kind of had a bit of a down year compared to his first season with Inter Miami, where I talked about in that first season with Inter Miami, he was probably the best Inter Miami player out there, but last season he kind of took a step back a little bit, and the amount that the Red Bulls pay to Miami to get Lewis Morgan, I've said before, I feel like that's a little bit of an overpay, but I will also say that you get a guy that is a very hardworking player, and he's going to be a guy that is going to try to fight every ways to produce any attacking for this team. So overall, I think it's a decent signing, even though it's a little bit overpriced. But other than that, the only other guy I can think of that could be a goal scoring threat, that is Patrick Klimala, who started to finally turn things around in the latter part of the season. But again, that's pretty much it. Well, actually, I will also say about Caden Clark too. I think they're now kind of banking the fact that he's going to be the guy that's going to be the goal scorer for this team, and he can definitely be a goal scorer too. I mean, you saw some crazy goals that he scored last season, but you just feel like that maybe puts a little bit too much pressure for a guy that well, I wouldn't say too much pressure, but more like you can't just simply hope that Caden Clark is your only goal scoring threat when what happened if he is going to get shut down, or worse, what if he get injured again? Like if he get injured again, you can definitely sense that this team could be having some issue going forward again in the attack, and that they're kind of have to revert to what they did last season, where a part of them only giving up 33 goals isn't just because of the fact that the defense was good, but it's also mainly because they kind of parked the bus a lot last season and go a very defensive approach that Gerhard Struber kind of implement this team, and hence that's why you saw a lot of games where when the Red Bulls play, they're probably some of the most boring game to watch. Like I expect this season, if you're a neutral, and you like some great attacking soccer, the Red Bulls is not a team you want to watch, because it's probably going to be one of those teams that's gonna win like 1-0 or 2-1 or 2-1 a lot of games to get all three points, and there could also be a lot of 0-0s in there too. Now, in terms of MVP for this team, I mean, it has to be Caden Clark, I guess. Again, it's hard to choose like an MVP because there really isn't a lot a player on this team that is an MVP. I mean, I guess maybe Aaron Long could be an MVP, but that depends on when he's going to come back, and when he does come back, will he be still at the top level as he was before he went down with that knee injury. But comeback player, speaking of which, I might as well just go very long, because again, they will hope that he is gonna be back on this team and able to be the guy that's gonna solidify this back line for this upcoming season. And in some way, they're going to heavily rely on him, because with the lack of depth in the defense, he's gonna have to maybe play a lot of minutes and hope that he is going to be that lockdown defender for this team. And also, not to mention, I think he's going to also be the captain for this team too, which means that I guess maybe in a couple years, or not just a couple years, but I'll give it 2 years before he's probably going to be leaving the Red Bulls, because again, whoever is the captain of this team, they're going to be leaving to another MLS team down the stretch. I mean, it's almost, I think I've said this before, it's almost like if you're a Red Bulls player, you kind of want to avoid that captaincy position for this team, because unless you want to, of course, leave for another MLS team down the line, you probably don't want to choose that position if you want to have a long-term future with this team, because again, it's just kind of almost a tradition nowadays. And despite, like, sometimes when the Red Bulls do make a little bit of a crude decision by getting rid of some of their captains when their captains are still at the top of their game, they don't care. They just love to do it every other off season. So again, if Aaron Long is that captain, don't be surprised he's going to be another he's going to join another team in a couple of years. Now, in terms of expectation, obviously playoffs is a bare minimum. I mean, they want to keep that streak alive for this upcoming season, which I believe it will be 13 consecutive seasons that they made it to the playoffs. They're able to do so. And then, of course, sign more reinforcement in the summer transfer window, because again, this team is still relatively thin, and throughout, if they want to make the playoffs again and hope that they don't get through an injury crisis, or if they do get into an injury crisis and able to deal with it well, they need to, of course, sign more reinforcement and sign more players. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're a Red Bulls fan, what's your optimism, your concern, and your expectation heading into this season? But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.